Welcome to the weekly worship service of the First Church in Boston, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Back Bay. First Church offers this broadcast each Sunday morning from 11 a.m. to noon here at 88.9 FM WERS, a service of Emerson College. Reverend Edmund Robinson's sermon today is titled, The Kindness of Strangers. Gigi Mitchell-Velasco will now perform today's musical prelude titled Rosie Midra by Ralph Vaughan Williams.
Good morning, and welcome to First Church in Boston's worship service this 23rd day of January 2022. I'm Edmund Robinson, the interim minister continuing the worship tradition of this church, which dates back almost 400 years. Because of the COVID virus, our Paul Rudolph designed sanctuary at Marlborough and Berkeley Streets in Boston's Back Bay is closed except to worship participants today, but we welcome those joining us live streaming on Facebook and those who are joining on WERS-FM, the radio station of Emerson College. We hope those joining off the premises will find the time to visit us in person sometime Sunday in the future when we can resume in-person worship. Our opening words are from Reverend Jacob Trapp, a UU minister who served one of our congregations in New Jersey for a long time. To worship. To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to be silent, receptive, before a tree astir with the wind or the passing shadow of a cloud. To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still small voice within. Worship is a loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain. Worship is kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and through acts of love. Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an inarticulate silence yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal. The words of Jacob Trapp. Our opening hymn is number 347. The choir will give us a rendition of this hymn, Gather the Spirit.
First Church Boston is Gigi Mitchell-Velasco. Today's featured musicians are soprano Erin Anderson, pianist Noel Velasco, and flutist Gigi Mitchell-Velasco. The audio engineer is Michael Sullivan, videographer is Masha Stepanova, and I'm your announcer, Vivian Sabota-Boric. Music for today also includes an anthem, Ubi Caritas, by American composer Ola Ghiello, the offertory Blue Boat Home, arranged by Peter Mayer, and the closing organ postlude Hefriedal, arranged by Ralph Vaughan Williams.
You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. And now the First Church Boston affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Please be seated. Our announcements this morning, as I said last Sunday, we're planning to start a small group ministry program in the next few weeks here. This will start out online, but may go to in-person meetings if the virus cooperates. A description of it is in the e-news this week, and you can consult the church website as well. Please email me if you are interested in being part of this program. How long we do virtual services depends on the virus also, and you can keep in touch with the church office for the latest. It appears that the numbers may be going down, and I think we'll have a meeting of the relevant committee next week. Our sanctuary, designed by modernist architect Paul Rudolph in what is called the brutalist style, turns 50 years old this year, and a celebration is being planned for the weekend of April 30th. Please put that in your calendars, and if you're interested in working on the celebration, please see me or the Standing Committee Chair, Fern Beck. And speaking of the Standing Committee is meeting by Zoom at 7 p.m. this Tuesday. All members of the church are welcome to attend. You can find more about it in the e-news. Our responsive reading is number 646 by poet Wendell Berry, called The Larger Circle. We clasp the hands of those that go before us,
and the hands of those who come after us.
We enter the little circle of each other's arms,
and the larger circle of others whose hands are joined in the hands,
and the larger circle of all creatures,
passing in and out of life, who move also in the hands,
to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it.
except in practice.
I want to invite you now into a time of meditation and prayer. I invite you to straighten your spine. Take a deep breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Hear these words from Ralph Waldo Emerson, a former minister of the Second Church. We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken. The whole human family is bathed with an element of love like a fine ether. How many persons we meet in houses whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor and who honor us. How many we see in the street or sit with in church, whom though silent we warmly rejoice to be with. Read the language of these wandering I-beams. The heart knoweth. Sermon reading today is from the Gospel of Luke, 10th chapter, starting at the 29th verse, the story of the Good Samaritan. But the lawyer, wanting to justify himself, asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he gave out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Our sermon hymn will be number 329, "Life Has Loveliness to Sell," the words by Sarah Teasdale and the tune by the former music minister of this church, Leo Collins.
Worship service of First Church in Boston, Unitarian Universalist, on the radio broadcast of WERS 88.9 FM at Emerson College. Also live streamed from the church's Facebook page. First Church is located in Back Bay and is easily accessible by subway on the Arlington Street station on the Green Line.
the kindness of strangers. In the reading a few moments ago, the poet Wendell Berry, in a few economical lines, describes the interconnected web in which we are all joined, a series of concentric circles which not only extend in space, but backwards and forwards in time, and do not just embrace the human community, but all creatures passing in and out of life. The whole multi-circular reality moves in a dance to a music so vast that, quote, no ear hears it except in fragments, unquote. One of the ways we are connected is through kinship. What does it mean to be kin to someone? In Hamlet, the first line spoken by Prince Hamlet is his bitter observations on his uncle Claudius, quote, a little more than kin and less than kind, unquote. A little more than kin and less than kind. In rhetoric, this would be called the chiasmus, a cross-like figure where the pattern set up in the first half is somehow reversed in the second, as in ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Hamlet speaks this in an aside as he is appearing at the royal court. At that point, he knows that his father has died, and Claudius has taken Hamlet's mother as wife. Hamlet's darkest suspicions are soon to be confirmed by the ghost of his father, that Claudius murdered him to get his throne. So Claudius is more than kin by virtue of this murder of Hamlet's father. He is the king. He is less than kind because he usurped the throne, so Hamlet will not inherit it. Hamlet's line throws into sharp relief at the beginning of the play what I would call the conventional wisdom about kindness. We expect people who are kin to each other to be kind to each other. Now, Darwin wrote long after Shakespeare, but he gave us a scientific reason for that conventional wisdom. The test of anything having to do with any creature in evolution is whether it helps the species survive and reproduce. This is true in behavior as well as physical traits. Each animal finds it advantageous to behave in such a way that their genes will be passed on to future generations. We all share genes most strongly with the people who are our closest kin. So natural selection will, over the course of generations, favor those with a strong instinct to protect their nearest kinfolk. Probably the best instance of this is the parental instinct, where a father or mother might risk his or her own life to ensure the survival of the offspring. But many societies, human and animal, are further organized into clans or tribes, and particularly when there are states of war, those closest in blood fight alongside each other. The conventional wisdom is reflected in language itself. The English words kin and kind, the noun, both derive from the same root, which means race, or give birth to, or a natural order. But Hamlet makes his pun, a little more than kin and less than kind, using the adjective form of kind, meaning gentle or mild. I expect that the origins of this sense of kind are in chivalric codes of the Middle Ages, which would express what I've called the conventional wisdom, that we expect people who are kin to each other to be kind to each other. Now, if they always were that way, it would be a dull world, and the profession of playwright, as well as actor, director, and producer, would never have gotten anywhere. Drama is born in the circumstances that conventional wisdom is stood on its head, when instead of kindness, there is murder among kinfolks, and that is the story of Hamlet. This morning, I want to talk about the unconventional wisdom, where kindness occurs not between kin, but between strangers. I've just been discussing Hamlet's first line from that great Shakespearean play, but I took the sermon title from the last line spoken in another great play, Tennessee Williams's A Streetcar Named Desire. The heroine, Blanche Dubois, has come from her native Mississippi to stay with her sister in New Orleans for reasons which we learn as the play progresses. By the end, it turns out that she has reached bottom and has nowhere else to turn. And while her sister Stella tries to be kind to Blanche, Stella's husband, Stanley Kowalski, is brutal and does everything he can to get her to leave. Under Stanley's pressure, Blanche experiences a kind of mental breakdown and loses touch with reality. And in the last scene, she is placed in the hands of a doctor who will take her to an asylum. As she goes quietly with him, she says, "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers," unquote. That line of the play is deeply and bitterly ironic as the closing of the play because Blanche has been revealing parts of her past. And though it is hard for the playgoer to separate truth from fantasy in a mind this muddled, it appears that for years she's been supporting herself from prostitution, which is an intimate interaction with strangers that is anything but kind. Wrapped up in that, with her is severe narcissism and alcohol abuse. In that last line, the playgoer realizes the final horror of Blanche's existence. She is at the mercy of strangers because she has no other means of coping. This horror reinforces again our conventional wisdom. We're supposed to give and receive kindness from our kinfolk, as we should never be dependent on getting kind treatment from strangers. Jesus, however, may beg to differ. Go back 2,000 years to the parable of the Good Samaritan, a very old story about the kindness of strangers. First, a word about who the Samaritans were. Samaritans were an ancient religion which considered itself descended from Abraham and part of the covenant God made with Abraham. They honor the Torah as the Jews do, but have a slightly different version of it. They did not worship at the temple in Jerusalem, but on a holy mountain which was near the present city of Nablus. At one point, when Jesus and his entourage are on their way to Jerusalem, they pass through villages of the Samaritans, and the disciples try to interest the villagers in Jesus, but they are ignored. So 2 disciples propose to Jesus that they call down the fire of heaven on the villages and eliminate them in revenge. Jesus rebukes them for this suggestion. Scholars think Luke's Gospel, chapters 9 and 10, are kind of an operations manual for the Jesus movement at its height in Jesus' lifetime. What is striking is that he sent the missionaries out into the world with no food, no money, no purse, and practically no clothing, totally vulnerable to whatever fate may await them. They were to stay in the homes of strangers and eat with strangers. This contrasts strongly with the normal restrictions of Jews of that day, who, following Jewish law laid down in the Torah, do not share table fellowship with non-Jews, do not stay in their houses, and especially do not eat food that is forbidden in the Jewish diet. Jesus, in other words, preached a radical vulnerability to his missionaries. Place yourself at the mercy of the town and its inhabitants. This is the framing of the Good Samaritan story. As Jesus is speaking, a lawyer asks Jesus a question, as the text says, in order to test him. Jesus has been talking about the kingdom of God, and the lawyer asks him what he must do to inherit eternal life. Jesus turns the question back on the questioner. What does the law say? The lawyer answers, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself," end quote. Jesus tells him he has answered rightly. But the lawyer's answer to this supremely important religious question is a bit misleading. There is an old prayer called the Shema from the book of Deuteronomy, which devout Jews say many times a day. They do to this day. It is called the Shema because it begins with that word, which means hear. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your might, end quote. That much is in Deuteronomy and is held to set forth the love duty toward God parallel to the first commandment of the Ten Commandments. But the command to love your neighbor as yourself is not found in the Shema. It is found among several miscellaneous commandments God is dictating to Moses in the book of Leviticus. Quote, "You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." End quote. So in the Gospels of Luke, Matthew, and Mark, these two separate rules from the Torah, one about love of God and one about love of neighbor, are linked. In Mark's Gospel, they're called the Great Commandment and the Second Commandment. So it seems that at least 3 out of the 4 Gospel writers were agreed that Jesus wanted to merge the duty to our neighbors with our duty to love God. Now let's go back to the lawyer in Luke's Gospel. The lawyer wants to justify himself. That is, he wants to know how far this duty goes to love his neighbor. And he asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Reasonable question. Are we all required to love everyone as much as we love ourselves without limits? Jesus answers with the parable of the Good Samaritan, and the answer to that question is basically yes. The story in a nutshell: a traveler who's set upon by robbers who take what he has and leave him half dead. A priest and a Levite both come upon him, and each passes on the other side of the road. Then along comes a Samaritan, the member of that group despised by the Jews. He doesn't pass by, but moved by pity, binds up the man's wounds and takes him to an inn and cares for him overnight. The next morning, he gives the innkeeper money to pay for the man's lodging for a few days and promises to pay him more if the man needs more recuperation. At the end of the parable, Jesus looks up and asks the lawyer, which one of these 3 was the neighbor to the injured man? The lawyer says, "The one who showed mercy." Jesus replied, "You're right, go and do likewise." We don't expect this kind of kindness from strangers, particularly from members of despised groups. I have said that conventional wisdom on kindness holds that you'll get more kindness from your kinfolks than from strangers, and that conventional wisdom fits with evolutionary theory. Jesus advocates unconventional wisdom, and in that sense, unnatural wisdom. First, he marries a commandment about loving God to a commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, and then he defines neighbor to include even those you might think of as enemies, members of despised minority groups. Now, Jesus is not alone in this among religious leaders. Mahayana Buddhism has a concept of metta, M-E-T-T-A, universal loving kindness or compassion, which we should all try to practice. There's a metta meditation in which you focus on someone who wishes you well in your life and try to experience what that person's love feels like, and then concentrate on someone with whom you have a difficult relationship and try to focus on that person, the love you felt for the first person. And of course, we are heir to the universalist tradition. Universalism itself supposes a God who embraces everyone, and everyone who wants to be like that God would also embrace everyone. All my life I've depended on the kindness of strangers, said Blanche Dubois. Actually, we all do every day. For we depend on most people to follow the rules and to stay in their lane. But sometimes there are acts which go quite outside the lines in a most bizarre and helpful way. Take Wesley Autry, the Harlem hero of 2007. In January of 2007, this construction worker was on a subway platform in New York with his 2 daughters when a young man near them had a seizure. Autry borrowed a pen and put it in the young man's mouth to keep him from biting his tongue. But the young man wriggled out of Autry's grasp and fell off the platform onto the subway tracks. As the victim lay on the tracks, Autry saw the light of an approaching train. A bystander held Autry's daughters away from the edge as Autry dove onto the tracks. He thought he would be able to pull him off the tracks, but there wasn't enough time. So he pulled the man into a drainage ditch between the tracks and covered his body with Autry's own. The brakemen applied the brakes, but most of the train passed over Autry's body before the train came to a halt. But the only injury either of them suffered was a grease stain on Autry's cap. Autry's picture appeared on the cover of Time magazine. Another stranger kindness closer to home. A few years ago, my wife Jacqueline was on tour in the Midwest and was riding in a minivan in Minnesota with a couple. It was on a 6-lane superhighway and the traffic was going over 70. It was rush hour, when a deer dashed out straight into the path of their car. They hit head-on, all the airbags deployed. The deer died instantly, and the car came to a halt and could not be restarted or moved. They called 911, but before the emergency responders got there, a car pulled up several feet behind them and turned on its flashers. The couple in the car then proceeded to take measures to warn oncoming traffic away, and they stayed with them until the first responders arrived. The couple who had assisted them would not even give their names. Why am I preaching on the kindness of strangers at this time? Because I feel the strain of these weeks of resurgence of the virus has put many of us in a raw state of mind. These times are not easy. We have a disappointment in retreating back into our isolation, and we experience the return of fear that we will not be able to avoid infection. We worry about whether our beloved church can survive so many transmutations, and sometimes we lose our tempers. But we are all akin here. We are all engaged in trying to bear witness to a light which can guide the world. It often is not easy to bear witness to that light. I want to give everyone listening to my voice a homework assignment in this sermon. Think of an instance when strangers were kind to you and helped you through some difficulty. Or think of times you have helped strangers. Then, if it doesn't violate anyone's privacy, share the stories, either at Zoom coffee hour after this service is over, or by emailing them to me. Or if you're signing up for the small group ministry, bring them to the first meeting, and that will be our topic for that meeting. The same torch that blazes for all that is holy lights the way for us to give and receive kindness from people we have never met. Kindness is what we need to give and receive. These are trying times, but we don't get through them with soreness or spleen. We get through them with kindness. Amen.
We have now come to the offertory part of our service. If you'd like to make a contribution to First Church in Boston, you can do so by mailing a check to the church at 66 Marlborough Street, Boston 02116. Or you can donate using texting on your smartphone. Just text the dollar amount, 5, 10, 20, etc., to 617-917-5610. You will receive an emailed confirmation. Again, the number is 617-917-5610. We'll now hear The Blue Boat Home by Peter Mayer.
Thank you, Aaron. That's beautiful. I invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me, number 346. Go forth in peace, in love, in kindness, remembering that the stranger you meet is a reflection of yourself in another body with another history. Deal with him or her as you would want to be treated yourself. Amen. Blessed be.
We'll now hear the Postlude Hifridal by Ralph Vaughan Williams. You have been listening to the weekly worship service of First Church in Boston, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. This year, First Church celebrates the 50th anniversary of our building in the Back Bay, designed by architect Paul Rudolph. Please join us every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock here at 88.9 FM WERS, a broadcast service of Emerson College. If you would like more information about programs or membership at First Church, please visit the church's website or send an email to office@firstchurchboston.org. I'm your announcer, Vivian Sabota-Boric. Thank you for joining us this morning. If you are listening on the radio, we'll now return you to the studios of WERS. The worship service of First Church Boston, streamed live on Facebook for Sunday, January 23rd, 2022, has concluded.